Under North Vale's suffocating blizzard, Ethan Cole, a homeless man on the brink of collapse, struggles to stay alive as the cold wears him down minute by minute. While stumbling through the streets looking for shelter, he discovers an old woman on the verge of freezing to death, inside an abandoned train station with no one else around to help. Even though his torn coat is the only thing keeping him alive, Ethan takes it off to wrap around her, gives her his last container of soup, and tries to get her somewhere safe. What he doesn't realize is that this single act of warmth may change his entire life. Before we go back, let us know where you're watching from. And subscribe, because tomorrow I've got something extra special for you. The wind didn't just blow through North Vale, it tore through it like a living thing, angry and relentless. Ethan Cole pressed his back against the brick wall of a closed hardware store, trying to catch his breath. Each inhale felt like swallowing broken glass. The cold wasn't just cold anymore. It was a physical force stabbing at his lungs, clawing at his skin, seeping into his bones. His coat, what remained of it, hung open and useless. The zipper had broken 3 weeks ago during a fight outside a soup kitchen. Some guy had tried to steal his spot in line, shoved him into a fence. The zipper caught and snapped clean off. Ethan had tried fixing it with a safety pin he'd found on the sidewalk. That lasted 2 days before the pin bent and fell out somewhere between 5th and Maple Street. Now the coat was just fabric. Heavy, yes. Lined with fleece that was matted and worn, yes. But without the zipper, the wind went straight through it, like it wasn't even there. His hands were white, not pale. White, the color of bone. He flexed his fingers, trying to get blood flowing, but they barely responded. The numbness had started at his fingertips hours ago. Now it had spread to his knuckles, creeping toward his wrists like frost on a window. He knew what that meant. He'd seen it before, on other homeless people, on his sister. Frostbite. If he didn't get warm soon, he'd lose fingers, maybe the whole hand. But where was he supposed to get warm? Every door was locked, every business was closed, the shelter was full, had been full for weeks. The churches that usually opened their basements during cold snaps were overwhelmed, turning people away by the dozens. There was nowhere to go, nothing to do but keep moving. Movement meant warmth, stopping meant death. Simple math. The streets stretched empty in every direction. Snow had piled against doorways, buried parked cars, covered street signs until they were just white lumps. The wind howled through the urban canyon, picking up snow and hurling it horizontally, turning the air into a white blur. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked, sharp, frightened yelps that cut through the wind and then stopped abruptly. Somewhere closer, a door slammed, metal on metal, final. But no one was outside. No one was stupid enough to be outside in weather like this, except Ethan. And the others like him. The invisible ones, the ones who didn't have a choice. He pushed off the wall, his legs protesting. His knees cracked loud enough to hear over the wind. He was 42 years old, but felt 70. The streets did that, aged you fast, wore you down. He started walking again, one foot in front of the other. Left boot, right boot, left boot, right boot. The left one had a hole in the sole. He'd tried patching it with duct tape, but the tape had peeled away days ago. Now water seeped in with every step. His sock was frozen solid, a block of ice wrapped around his toes. He couldn't feel them anymore, hadn't felt them since noon. That was bad, really bad. But what was he supposed to do? Buy new boots with what money? The $17 in his pocket was meant for food. If he spent it on boots, he wouldn't eat. If he didn't eat, he'd be too weak to walk. And if he couldn't walk, he'd freeze. Always the math. Always the calculations. How long can I walk before my legs give out? How many more hours until the soup kitchen opens? If I sleep in that doorway, will I wake up? In his hands, wrapped carefully in newspaper for insulation, was a styrofoam container. Inside was soup chicken noodle with actual chunks of chicken carrots, celery, soft noodles in golden broth. The community kitchen on 5th Street had given it to him at 4 o'clock. It was after 6 now. Almost 2.5 hours he'd been carrying it. His stomach growled, a sharp, painful sound that made him wince and press a hand to his abdomen. When was the last time he'd eaten? Yesterday morning, the day before. Time blurred when you were cold and hungry. Days melted together into one endless gray stretch of survival. But he didn't open the container. Not yet, because once he ate it, it would be gone. And then what? The warmth against his palms would disappear. The small comfort of knowing he had something, even just soup, would vanish. He'd be left with nothing but the cold and the dark and the endless, exhausting effort to make it to tomorrow. So he carried it, let the heat seep into his frozen hands, let the weight of it remind him that he was still alive, still human, still deserving of something warm. People who'd never been homeless didn't understand. They thought it was about lacking money, about not having a house. And sure, those things were true, but it wasn't the core of it. The core was smaller than that, more fundamental. It was about the math, the constant grinding calculation of stretching one meal into 2 days, one pair of socks into a week, one more hour into survival. It was about making impossible choices and living with them. Ethan's boots crunched through the snow. Each step sent a jolt of pain through his feet, or where his feet should be. The left one especially. He tried not to think about what was happening to his toes inside that frozen sock. He passed houses, row after row of them, warm houses with their curtains drawn, lights glowing yellow behind windows. He could see shadows moving inside some of them. Families, people sitting down to dinner, kids doing homework, normal people living normal lives. He didn't look too long. Looking made it worse. Made him remember when he had a house, when he had a family, when he was one of those shadows moving behind warm windows. Before Emily died, before everything fell apart. A gust of wind slammed into him from the side. He staggered, nearly fell, caught himself against a mailbox. The metal was so cold it burned his palm. He jerked his hand back with a hiss. "In a storm," he muttered through cracked, bleeding lips. People only think about saving themselves. It wasn't judgment, just observation. A fact he'd learned over 4 years on the streets. When survival was on the line, people looked out for themselves. It was human nature, self-preservation. He'd learned that the night Emily died. He'd screamed for help, pounded on doors, begged strangers to call an ambulance, and they'd looked at him, this dirty, desperate man, and closed their doors, locked them, called the police to report a disturbance. By the time the ambulance came, Emily was gone. The cold doesn't ask who you are. It doesn't care if you're good or bad innocent, or guilty young or old. It doesn't care about your story or your circumstances. It only asks one question: how long can you last? Ethan didn't know the answer anymore. He kept walking. His breath came out in short white puffs that the wind immediately tore away. His chest ached. His ribs, probably cracked from a fall last week, protested with every breath. The buildings around him were dark. Businesses closed for the night, or closed permanently. There were a lot of those. Empty storefronts with "for lease" signs in the windows. The economic downturn had hit Northvale hard. Shuttered shops laid off workers' families struggling. Not that it mattered to Ethan. He'd been struggling long before the economy tanked. He turned a corner onto Henderson Street. The wind hit him full in the face. He ducked his head, pulling the useless coat tighter even though it did nothing. Ahead, barely visible through the swirling snow, was the old train station. Ethan had slept there a few times back in September and October when the weather was still manageable. The building had been abandoned for years, decades maybe. Half the roof had collapsed. The walls were covered in graffiti. All the windows were smashed out, but it blocked the wind, created small pockets of shelter where a person could curl up and maybe get a few hours of sleep without freezing. Not tonight, though. Tonight the station was a death trap. He could hear the wind screaming through it from a block away, that hollow, keening sound of air rushing through empty space. He started to pass it by. Then he heard something else, a sound, faint, almost lost beneath the wind. He stopped, listened. There, again. Not the wind, something else, something that made his stomach clench. A moan. Human. Weak. Desperate. "No," Ethan whispered. "No, no, no." But his feet were already moving toward the station, against every instinct, against every bit of sense he had left. He stepped off the sidewalk. Snow immediately poured into his boot, the one with the hole. The shock of cold made him gasp. He kept moving. The train station loomed closer. In the darkness and the snow, it looked like something out of a nightmare. Skeletal, broken, dangerous. Under the entrance, beneath what remained of the overhang, was a shape. A person. Ethan's heart sank like a stone. He moved closer, pulling out his phone. The battery was at 3%. He turned on the flashlight, cupping his hand around it to preserve what little power remained. The beam fell on an old woman. She was curled on the concrete in a fetal position, her knees pulled to her chest, her arms wrapped around herself. She wore a coat thin, meant for autumn, not this Arctic hell. Her hair was gray, wild, crusted with ice and snow. Her face was gray too, the color of ash. Margaret Hale. Though Ethan didn't know her name yet, didn't know anything about her except that she was dying. Her body shook with violent tremors, not the small shivers of someone who is cold. These were full-body convulsions, uncontrollable. Her teeth chattered so hard he could hear them from 5 feet away. "Ma'am." His voice came out rough, barely audible over the wind. No response. Her eyes were closed. Her lips were blue, not just pale blue, dark blue, purple almost. Hypothermia. Late stage. Ethan had seen it before. On the streets, in shelters, on his sister. He crouched beside the woman, his knees protesting. The broken ribs sent a spike of pain through his chest. He ignored it. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Still nothing. He reached out with a trembling hand and touched her shoulder. The fabric of her coat was thin, so thin. He could feel the bone beneath it. At his touch, her eyes fluttered open. They were cloudy, unfocused, glassy. The eyes of someone who was more gone than here. "Help," she whispered. The word was barely audible. "Please." Ethan's mind raced. The shelter was 6 blocks away. She couldn't walk, that much was obvious. He couldn't carry her, not in his condition. He was weak from hunger, injured from the fall last week, barely able to keep himself upright. Call 911. His phone was at 3%. Even if he called, even if he could explain where they were, how long would it take for an ambulance to arrive? 20 minutes, 30. Longer in this storm. She didn't have 30 minutes. She'd be dead in 10. People always say someone else will help. That's what they tell themselves when they walk past homeless people, when they see someone in trouble and keep going. Someone else will handle it. Someone else will call. Someone else will care. That's how people end up dying alone in abandoned train stations. Ethan looked at the woman's face. Really looked at her. She was old. 70. Maybe older. Deep lines around her eyes and mouth. Liver spots on her hands. Someone's mother. Someone's grandmother. Someone's daughter. Someone. "If I walk away," he said aloud, though only he could hear it, "she won't make it through the night." The wind howled in agreement. He thought about Emily, about that night in the car, about holding her while she shook and cried and begged him to make the cold stop, about feeling her go still in his arms, about screaming for help that never came. He thought about the doors that stayed closed, the faces that turned away, the people who decided his sister wasn't worth saving. He looked down at the old woman. "I won't let it happen again," he whispered. His hands moved to his coat buttons before his brain fully registered the decision. Ethan's fingers fumbled with the first button. They were stiff, barely responsive. The cold had locked his joints, turned his hands into clumsy clubs. The button was small. His fingers wouldn't cooperate. "Come on," he muttered through gritted teeth. "Come on." 10 seconds passed. 15. Finally, the button slipped free. 3 more to go. The second button took even longer. His hands were shaking now, not from cold, though that was part of it. From the enormity of what he was about to do. This coat was the only thing keeping him alive. Without it, he'd be exposed, vulnerable, at the mercy of the wind and the cold and the night. He'd be lucky to survive an hour. The third button came loose. 1 more. The old woman moaned softly. Her eyes had closed again. Her shaking had slowed. That wasn't a good sign. When the body stopped shivering, it meant the hypothermia was critical. The body was shutting down, conserving energy for vital organs. The last stage before death. 4th button. Done. Ethan pulled the coat off. The moment he did, the cold hit him like a physical blow. The air temperature was -15, with wind chill -30. Without the coat, it felt like being plunged into ice water. Every nerve in his body screamed. His whole body seized muscles locking up. He gasped a sharp, involuntary sound. For a moment, he couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The cold was so intense it was almost painful. No, it was painful, like being stabbed with 1,000 frozen needles. His thermal shirt, the only layer he had left, did nothing. Absolutely nothing. The wind went straight through it, like it was made of tissue paper. "Oh God," he breathed. "Oh God." But he didn't stop. He knelt beside the woman slowly, carefully, because his body didn't want to obey anymore. Every movement was agony. His muscles protested. His broken ribs screamed. He lifted her shoulders as gently as he could. She was incredibly light. He could feel every bone, every vertebra through her thin coat. She weighed maybe 90 pounds, probably less. "I'm sorry," he whispered as he maneuvered his coat around her. "This is gonna hurt. I'm sorry." She moaned again as he moved her, a sound of pain, of confusion. He worked quickly, wrapping the coat around her shoulders, tucking it over her chest, pulling the sides closed. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely manage it. The cold was already seeping into his core, making him clumsy. When he was done, she was wrapped in his coat. Dirty and torn as it was still infinitely better than the thin autumn jacket she'd been wearing. Her eyes opened, focused on his face. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Then she spoke. Her voice was barely a whisper, hoarse and broken. "You're giving me—" She couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't believe what she was seeing. "You need it more than I do," Ethan said. His teeth were already chattering. The words came out choppy, broken by shivers. She tried to shake her head. The movement was weak, barely there. "No, you'll freeze." "I'll be fine." The lie hung in the air between them. They both knew it was a lie. Without that coat, Ethan wouldn't make it an hour, maybe not even 30 minutes. His thin thermal shirt was worthless in this cold. The wind cut straight through it. He could already feel his body temperature dropping. Another gust of wind slammed into him. He hunched forward, wrapping his arms around himself. It did nothing. The cold was everywhere. He looked down at the soup container, still in his hands, still warm. His last meal, his last source of warmth. He stared at it for a long moment. His stomach was a hollow ache. His body screamed for calories, for fuel, for something to keep going. But the woman needed it more. He pressed the container into her hands. They were so cold they barely closed around it. "Eat this," he said. "Please." She looked down at the container, then up at him, her eyes filled with tears. They froze on her cheeks before they could fall, turning into tiny ice crystals. "Why?" The word came out broken, desperate. "Why would you?" Ethan didn't answer. He couldn't, because if he tried to explain, if he tried to put into words why he was giving away everything he had to a stranger, he would break. He would start crying, and he wouldn't be able to stop. So he just shook his head. He stood up. The movement was slow, painful. His legs didn't want to hold him. His body was already shutting down, trying to conserve warmth. He turned his back on the old woman and started walking. Behind him, he heard her voice, small and broken and desperate. "Thank you. Thank you. God bless you. Please, come back." But Ethan didn't turn around, because if he turned around, if he saw her holding his coat and his food, he would take it back. The survival instinct would kick in. He would grab the coat and the soup and run, and she would die. So he kept walking. The cold hit him immediately, totally, absolutely. Without the coat, the wind cut through him like he was made of paper. His skin burned, then went numb. His muscles locked up, making each step a battle. His breathing came in short, painful gasps. He made it half a block before his vision started to blur. 1 block before his legs gave out. He caught himself against a parked car, both hands on the hood. Snow had piled on top of it 6 inches or more. It collapsed under his weight, covering his arms. He couldn't feel it, couldn't feel anything anymore. "Get up," he told himself through chattering teeth. "Get up. Keep moving." But his body wouldn't obey. His legs were rubber. His vision swam. The world tilted sideways. Kindness from those who've suffered the most isn't just rare, it's devastating. Because they know exactly what they're giving up. They understand the cost, and they choose to pay it anyway. Ethan pushed off the car, took 1 step. His foot dragged through the snow, barely lifting. Another step. He stumbled, caught himself. Another step. He didn't know where he was going. Just away. Away from the train station, away from the woman, away from the choice he'd made so he wouldn't second-guess it. The streets blurred together. He turned corners without knowing why, past buildings without seeing them. The cold was everything now, in his bones, in his blood, in his mind. At some point, he didn't know when he realized he was crying. The tears froze on his face, instantly turning into ice that stuck to his skin. "Emily," he whispered into the wind. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I couldn't save you." The wind screamed in response. His vision was going dark at the edges. Tunnel vision. His body was shutting down. He thought about his sister, about her smile, about the way she'd laugh at his stupid jokes, about how she'd been so cold in that car, shivering so hard her teeth chattered, and he'd held her and promised it would be okay. He'd lied to her too. Ethan's legs gave out. He fell to his knees in the snow. The impact sent pain shooting through his body, but he barely felt it. Everything was distant now, fading. "I tried, Em." he whispered. "I tried to do better this time." The snow was soft beneath him, cold but soft. Maybe he thought distantly he could just rest for a minute, just close his eyes for a moment, just... A hand grabbed his shoulder. Hey man, you can't stay here." Ethan blinked, tried to focus. A face swam into view. Young, Latino, concerned. "You hear me? You gotta get up." "Can't," Ethan slurred. "Too cold. There's a heating vent behind the deli. Come on." Hands under his arms, lifting him. Ethan's legs dragged as the stranger half carried, half dragged him down an alley. True to his word, there was a vent. Warm air billowed out from the deli's kitchen exhaust. The stranger propped Ethan against the wall, positioning him directly in front of the warm air. "Stay here," the man said. "Don't move. I'll find help." He disappeared into the snow. Ethan sat there, warm air washing over him. Slowly, so slowly, feeling returned to his limbs. The shaking started, violent, uncontrollable tremors that rattled his whole body. But he was alive. For now. Ethan spent 4 days behind that deli. The heating vent ran almost constantly. The kitchen operated from 6 in the morning until midnight. The exhaust air wasn't hot exactly, but it was warm. Significantly warmer than the ambient temperature. Warm enough to keep him alive. Barely. Other homeless people knew about the spot. A woman named Rita was there when Ethan was dragged in by the stranger. She'd claimed the space first had been there for over a week. "Room for one more," she'd said, her voice gravelly from years of smoking. "Long as you don't cause trouble." Ethan didn't cause trouble. He didn't have the energy. He spent those 4 days in a semi-conscious haze, shivering, aching, trying to stay warm. The Latino man who'd saved him, Carlos, he learned brought food once. A burger and fries from somewhere, probably stolen, but Ethan didn't ask questions. He ate it in 3 minutes and felt marginally more human. Rita shared her blanket. Well, blanket was generous. It was a collection of trash bags she'd duct taped together. But it blocked the wind. That was something. At night, when the kitchen closed and the heating vent went silent, the cold came back with a vengeance. Those were the worst hours. Ethan would curl into the smallest ball possible, arms wrapped around his knees, and try not to think about freezing to death. He thought about the old woman instead, Margaret, though he still didn't know her name. Was she alive? Had someone found her? Had his coat been enough? Or had she died there, wrapped in his coat, holding his soup? The thought made him sick. On the 4th day, the storm finally broke. The wind died. The snow stopped. The temperature climbed to a relatively balmy 10 degrees. Ethan knew he couldn't stay behind the deli forever. Rita made it clear she needed her space back, and the deli owner was getting suspicious, kept coming out to check the alley, threatening to call the cops. So, on the 4th evening, as the sun set and the temperature dropped again, Ethan made his way to the North Vale Community Shelter. He'd been on the waiting list for 7 weeks. 7 weeks of sleeping outside in doorways, under bridges, behind dumpsters. 7 weeks of cold and hunger and exhaustion. Maybe finally there would be space. The shelter was chaos. Ethan stepped through the doors and was immediately hit by a wall of sound and smell. People talking, arguing, crying. The harsh fluorescent lights. The overwhelming smell of unwashed bodies, industrial cleaner, and cheap soup. People everywhere. On cots arranged in neat rows, on the floor between the cots, sitting in plastic chairs along the walls, leaning against every available surface. The heating system rattled and wheezed, struggling to warm a space meant for 50, but holding at least 100. Ethan found a spot near the back wall and sank down. His whole body ached. His feet were swollen. He'd finally taken off his boots and seen the damage. 2 toes on his left foot were black. 3 on his right were gray. Frostbite. Advanced. He tried not to think about what that meant, about amputation, about how you couldn't walk with missing toes, about how hard it was to survive on the streets when you couldn't walk. Around him, the shelter hummed with desperate life. An old man near the door kept shouting about government conspiracies. No one paid attention. A young mother tried to soothe a crying baby, rocking it back and forth, singing softly. 2 middle-aged men played cards with a deck missing half the suits, arguing over whose turn it was. In the corner, a teenager couldn't be more than 17, sat with her arms wrapped around her knees, staring at nothing. Ethan recognized that look. He'd worn it himself. The 1,000-yard stare. The look of someone who'd given up. Linda Martinez, the shelter manager, moved through the crowd with a clipboard. She was a stocky woman in her 50s, gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, exhaustion carved into every line of her face. Ethan had talked to her before. She was fair but firm, didn't take shit from anyone but genuinely cared about the people she served. "Johnson, Mary Johnson." Linda called out, her voice cutting through the noise. A woman near the window, painfully thin, missing several teeth, stood up. Linda checked her clipboard. "You're in cot 12. Kitchen duty tomorrow at 6 a.m. You miss it, you lose the bed." "Understood." "Yes, ma'am," Mary said softly. "Good." Next, Carlos Rodriguez. Carlos, the same man who'd saved Ethan, jumped up. "Here." "Cot 23. Maintenance duty at 7. We need help with the furnace." "Got it." Linda called more names. One by one, people claimed cots. One by one, the crowd thinned slightly. Ethan waited. He'd been waiting for 7 weeks. 7 weeks of sleeping outside while others got beds. 7 weeks of being told, "Sorry, we're full. Come back tomorrow. Tomorrow. Always tomorrow." "Please," he thought, "please let there be space. Just one bed. That's all I need. Just one night of warmth. One night of sleep." Ethan Cole, his head snapped up so fast his neck cracked. Linda was looking right at him. "You're up. Cot 14. For a moment, a long suspended moment, Ethan couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't process what he'd just heard. A bed. An actual bed. After 7 weeks, after 4 years, a bed. He stood slowly. His legs were unsteady. The room swayed. People around him glanced up, some with envy, some with relief that the list was moving, some with blank expressions that gave away nothing. Ethan started walking toward Linda, weaving between bodies and belongings. That's when he saw her. In the corner, near the restrooms, hunched over on a plastic chair. The old woman, Margaret. She was alive. Ethan stopped dead in his tracks. His heart hammered against his broken ribs. She looked worse than she had in the storm. Significantly worse. Thinner somehow, like the days since had eaten away at her. Her hair was clean, someone must have helped her wash it, but wild, sticking up in gray tufts. Her face was gaunt, hollow. She wore his coat. It dwarfed her. The sleeves hung past her hands. The bottom fell to her knees. As he watched, she started coughing. Deep, wet coughs that shook her entire frame. She bent forward, pressing a hand to her chest, the other gripping the chair for support. The coughs went on and on. Violent. Painful sounding. No one helped her. No one even looked. Ethan felt his feet moving before he made the decision to move them. "Wait," he said. Linda looked up from her clipboard. "Cole, what's wrong?" Ethan pointed at Margaret. "Her. How long has she been here?" Linda glanced over. "Oh, her. She came in yesterday." "Margaret something. Why?" "Is she on the list?" "Yeah, but we're full. She'll have to wait." "Wait how long?" Linda shrugged tiredly. "Could be today, could be next week. Depends on who leaves, who gets kicked out. You know how it is." Ethan did know. He knew exactly how it was. When you've hit rock bottom, when you've finally clawed your way to something good, the scariest thing in the world is having to give it up. He looked at the cot. Cot 14. His name was on it. After 7 weeks of waiting, it was his. He looked at Margaret. She'd stopped coughing, but was still bent over, breathing hard. Her hand trembled against her chest. "If she goes outside tonight," Ethan heard himself say, "she'll die." Linda followed his gaze. Really looked at Margaret this time, at the way she was struggling to breathe, at how thin she was, at the exhaustion in every line of her body. "Yeah," Linda admitted quietly, "probably." Ethan closed his eyes. He thought about Emily, about that night in the car, about her last words. "I'm so cold, Ethan, please make it stop." He'd failed her. He'd held her and promised it would be okay, and he'd failed. He couldn't fail again. "Give her the bed," Ethan said. His voice came out steady, calm, even though inside he was screaming. Linda blinked. "What?" "Give her my bed, cot 14. She needs it more than I do." "Cole, you've been waiting 7. "I know." He opened his eyes and looked at Linda. "I know exactly how long I've been waiting. But look at her." Linda looked. Margaret was trying to stand now, using the chair for support. Her legs shook. She made it halfway up before her strength gave out. She collapsed back into the chair. Several people glanced over but quickly looked away. "Not my problem." That was the unspoken rule of the shelter. Everyone had their own problems. You couldn't take on everyone else's. "If she goes outside," Ethan repeated, "she'll die." The words hung heavy in the air. Linda pressed her lips together, looked at her clipboard, looked at Margaret, looked at Ethan. "You're absolutely sure?" she asked. "Because if you walk out that door, you're back at the end of the list. I can't hold spots." "I understand." "And you're not going to change your mind in 5 minutes and come back here demanding the bed." "No." Why? Linda's voice was softer now. Why would you do this? Ethan thought about his sister, about the coat, about the soup, about the choice he'd already made once. Because some people spend their whole lives trying to make up for one mistake, he said quietly. Linda studied his face for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. All right, but Cole, you're a better person than most. She raised her voice. Margaret Hale. The old woman looked up. Her eyes were cloudy with exhaustion and pain. You've got cot 14. Margaret blinked. What? Cot 14. You're in. Come on. But I thought there was no... Change of plans. Margaret stood slowly, gripping the chair with both hands. She was shaking. Each step looked like it took enormous effort. As she moved forward past other waiting people, she saw Ethan standing there. Their eyes met. Recognition hit her like a wave. Her mouth opened. Her eyes went wide. You, she whispered. You're the man from the storm. You gave me. She looked down at the coat she was wearing. His coat. Oh my God, you're the one who saved me. Ethan didn't wait to hear more. He turned and pushed through the crowd toward the exit. Cole, Linda called after him. Where are you going? He didn't answer. Wait, Margaret's voice stronger now. Please wait, I need to thank you, I need to. But Ethan was already at the door. He shoved it open and stepped into the cold. The door swung shut behind him, cutting off the sound of Margaret calling his name. Ethan stood on the sidewalk. The street was dark, empty. The wind had picked up again. He took a deep breath, exhaled slowly, watching his breath fog in the air. I won't let another person die from the cold, he said to himself, to Emily, to whoever was listening. Then he started walking. The night was brutal. Ethan wandered the streets for hours trying to stay moving. He'd given away his coat 4 days ago. Now he'd given away his bed. He had nothing. No coat, no food, no shelter, no plan. Just the clothes on his back. A thin thermal shirt and jeans that were more whole than fabric, and $17 in his pocket. The cold was relentless. It pressed against him from all sides, seeping into his bones, making every step agony. His feet were the worst. The frostbite had progressed. With every step, pain shot up his legs, sharp, stabbing. He tried to walk on the sides of his feet to take pressure off the damaged toes, but that only helped marginally. He found himself back in the alley behind the deli. The heating vent was running, but Rita was there, and she'd claimed 2 other people, a young couple who looked barely 20. Sorry, Ethan, Rita said, not meeting his eyes. Too crowded. Can't fit anymore. Rita, please. Just for tonight. I said no. Find your own spot. Ethan didn't argue, didn't have the energy. He moved on. He tried the loading dock behind the grocery store. Occupied. A man he didn't recognize told him to fuck off or he'd stab him. He tried the doorway of a closed bank. Too exposed. The wind whipped through the street like a hurricane. He tried under the overpass. A small homeless encampment had formed there, 6 or 7 people with tarps and shopping carts. But they were territorial. Didn't want outsiders. Move along, a grizzled man said, brandishing a pipe. This is our spot. So Ethan moved along. By 2 in the morning, he was desperate. His body was shutting down. He couldn't feel his hands or feet. His thoughts were getting fuzzy, disconnected. Hypothermia. He recognized the signs. He stumbled into an alley behind a closed restaurant. There was a dumpster, and beside it, a pile of flattened cardboard boxes. It wasn't much, but it was something. Ethan pulled the cardboard over himself like a blanket. It did almost nothing. The wind went straight through it, but it was better than nothing. He curled into the smallest ball possible and closed his eyes. Sleep was dangerous. He knew that. When you were this cold, sleep could easily become death. Your body temperature would drop, your heart would slow, and you'd just stop. But he was so tired, so cold, so done. I'm sorry, Emily, he whispered into the darkness. I tried. I really tried. His mind drifted. Memories came disjointed and strange. Emily as a little girl, maybe 6 years old, chasing butterflies in the park, laughing, her dress covered in grass stains. His mother before the cancer making pancakes on Sunday mornings, the smell of maple syrup. His first apartment, tiny, barely 400 square feet, but it was his. A place to call home. His sister at 14 reading by flashlight under the covers because it was past bedtime. Always reading, always learning. The car, that fucking car, where they'd been living after the eviction, where Emily had died. Her face, blue, still, empty. Ethan's eyes snapped open. No, not yet, not like this. He sat up cardboard, falling away. His body screamed in protest. He stood, swayed, caught himself against the dumpster. Move, he told himself. Keep moving. He stumbled out of the alley, back onto the street. Dawn was still hours away, the darkest part of the night. Ethan walked, one foot in front of the other, barely lifting them, dragging through the snow. He didn't know where he was going. Didn't matter. Just had to keep moving. His vision was blurring, the edges going dark. He turned a corner, or thought he did. Hard to tell. His foot caught on something. He fell. The impact knocked the wind out of him. He lay there on the frozen sidewalk, unable to move. This is it, he thought distantly. This is how it ends. He closed his eyes. Somewhere far away, he heard a door open. Footsteps. Hey, someone's out here. More footsteps, voices, hands on his shoulders rolling him over. He's alive, barely but alive. Call 911 inches. Should we bring him inside? The shelter rules say, fuck the rules, he'll die out here. Ethan was lifted, carried. The warmth hit him like a wall as they brought him inside somewhere. The North Vale Community Shelter. They'd found him outside their doors. Linda's face appeared above him. Cole, Jesus Christ, Cole. Gave, my bed, he managed. I know, you idiot. I know. Is she... Okay, the woman. She's fine. She's alive. Thanks to you. Ethan closed his eyes. Good. That's good. Everything went dark. Ethan woke up in the hospital. White walls, bright lights, the steady beep of monitors. For a moment, he didn't know where he was. Didn't remember how he got there. Then it all came back. The storm. The old woman. Giving away his coat. Giving away his bed. Collapsing outside the shelter. A nurse appeared. Young. Latina. Tired eyes, but a kind smile. You're awake. Good. How do you feel? Like I got hit by a truck, Ethan wanted to say. But what came out was water. She helped him sit up and handed him a cup with a straw. The water was the best thing he'd ever tasted. You're lucky to be alive, the nurse said. Severe hypothermia, advanced frostbite on both feet, 3 broken ribs, malnutrition, dehydration, and pneumonia. Your body was in full shutdown when they brought you in. My feet. Her smile faltered. The doctor will talk to you about that? That wasn't good. How long have I been here? 2 days. You've been in and out of consciousness. 2 days. Jesus. There's someone who wants to see you, the nurse said. She's been here almost the whole time. Wouldn't leave. Who? The nurse just smiled. I'll send her in. She left. A moment later, the door opened. Margaret walked in. She looked completely different from the last time he'd seen her. Clean. Healthy. Her hair was styled. She wore nice clothes, a blue cardigan and slacks, a silk scarf around her neck. But her eyes were red, like she'd been crying. She stopped at the foot of his bed, gripping the rail with both hands. You, she said softly. It's really you. Ethan tried to sit up straighter, winced as his ribs protested. Mrs. You know my name. Linda told me. Ethan Cole. She moved closer, pulled a chair up to his bedside. And yes, I know what you did. All of it. The coat, the food, the bed at the shelter. You needed them. And you didn't. Her voice broke. You nearly died, Ethan. Do you understand that you nearly died because you kept giving away everything you had? But I didn't die. By sheer luck. She was crying now. They found you unconscious on the sidewalk. 5 more minutes and you would have been gone. Ethan looked away. I'm sorry you were worried. You're sorry. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Ethan, look at me. He did. Why? She asked. Why would you do this? You don't know me. I'm no one to you. Why would you sacrifice everything? Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. I had a sister, Emily. She was 16 when she died. Margaret listened, not interrupting. We were living in a car. I'd lost my job, lost our apartment. It was winter, cold like this storm. We tried to stay warm, but... He swallowed hard. She got hypothermia. I screamed for help, pounded on doors, begged people to call an ambulance, and no one helped. One person called the cops on me, said I was disturbing the peace. By the time the ambulance came, he didn't finish. Margaret's hand covered her mouth. I held her while she died. Ethan continued. His voice was flat, emotionless, the only way he could get through it. She was so cold, shaking so hard, and she looked at me and said, I'm so cold, Ethan. Please make it stop. And I couldn't. I couldn't make it stop. Tears ran down his face. He didn't wipe them away. After she died, I fell apart, lost everything, ended up on the streets. And every winter, every time I see someone cold and alone, all I can see is Emily. And I can't walk away. I can't be like those people who close their doors. I can't let someone else die while I do nothing. He looked at Margaret. When I saw you in that train station, all I could see was my sister. And I thought, maybe if I save you, maybe if I do what no one did for Emily, maybe it means something. Maybe her death means something. The room was silent except for the beeping monitors and the sound of Margaret crying. She reached out and took his hand in both of hers. It does mean something, she said firmly. Ethan, what you did, it means everything. She squeezed his hand. Do you know what happened after you gave me your coat? He shook his head. Someone found me. A couple walking their dog. They called an ambulance. I spent 2 days in the hospital, and then Linda took me into the shelter. And the whole time I kept thinking about you. This stranger who gave me everything. I didn't even know your name, but I knew I had to find you. To thank you. She pulled something from her purse. A piece of paper. Crumpled and stained. They found this in your coat pocket. The coat you gave me. Ethan's stomach dropped. Margaret unfolded the paper with trembling hands. She read aloud, My sister Emily died from the cold when she was 16. I couldn't save her. I won't let it happen to anyone else. Never again. She looked up at him, tears streaming. You lost your sister. You live with that pain every day. And you still chose to save me. A stranger. Even though it nearly killed you. We often realize the depth of kindness too late. But sometimes, if we're lucky, we realize it in time. I don't deserve, Ethan started. Stop, Margaret cut him off. Don't say you don't deserve thanks. Don't say it was nothing. What you did was extraordinary, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure it wasn't in vain. What do you mean? You'll see, she said with a small smile. First, you need to heal. The doctor said you'll be here at least another week. My feet. Her smile faded. They had to amputate 2 toes on your left foot, 1 on your right. I'm sorry, Ethan, I'm so sorry. He closed his eyes. 3 toes, gone, because he'd given away his coat. But you'll walk again, Margaret said quickly. With physical therapy and proper shoes, you'll be fine, and you'll never have to worry about where to sleep or what to eat ever again. I promise you that. Mrs. Hale. Margaret, please. Margaret, I don't want charity. It's not charity. Her voice was firm. It's justice. You saved my life, multiple times. And now, I'm going to help save yours. Before Ethan could respond, there was a knock at the door. A man entered, tall, well-dressed, early 50s, graying at the temples. Richard Hale. Ethan recognized him from the news, one of the wealthiest men in the state. Margaret's son. Richard Hale stopped just inside the door, his eyes fixed on Ethan. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Richard crossed the room in 3 long strides. He stopped at Ethan's bedside, and he knelt. Mr. Cole, Richard said, his voice thick with emotion. You saved my mother's life. Ethan didn't know what to say. This man, this billionaire, was kneeling beside his hospital bed. Sir, you don't need to. Yes, I do. Richard looked up at him. His eyes were red. I spent 3 years looking for her. 3 years. Private investigators, police, billboards, rewards, everything I could think of. And in all that time, with all my resources, I couldn't find her. He glanced at his mother, then back at Ethan. But you had nothing. No money, no resources. You were barely surviving yourself, and you gave her everything. Your coat, your food, your bed. You nearly died to keep her alive. Anyone would have... No, Richard cut him off. His voice was sharp. They wouldn't have. Do you know how many people saw my mother on the streets? Hundreds, thousands probably. And do you know how many helped? He paused. 1. You. Ethan felt tears burning his eyes. I couldn't walk away. I know. Richard stood. My mother told me about your sister, about Emily, and I'm sorry. I'm so deeply sorry for your loss. Thank you. Richard took a breath. I want to do something for you. I don't want money, Ethan said quickly. Richard smiled slightly. My mother said you'd say that, and I respect it, but please hear me out. He pulled up another chair and sat. I can't bring back your sister. I can't undo the years you've spent on the streets, but I can make sure that what happened to you and Emily doesn't happen to anyone else. What do you mean? The North Vale Community Shelter. I'm going to fund it, completely. New heating system, new beds, expanded kitchen, medical facilities, mental health services, job training, everything it needs. Ethan's eyes widened. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars. Try millions, Richard said with a slight smile. But it's worth it. Every penny. He leaned forward. And I'm starting a new program. The Second Chance Initiative. It will provide housing assistance, job training, addiction support, medical care, everything people need to get back on their feet, to have a real chance at rebuilding their lives. Money doesn't fix the past, but it can save the present. That's incredible, Ethan said. And I want you to run it. Ethan stared. What? The Second Chance Initiative. I want you to be the program manager. I can't. I don't have experience with... You have 4 years of experience living on the streets. You know what people need. You understand their struggles. You've been there. Richard's expression was earnest. There's no one better qualified than you. But think about it, Richard said. You don't have to decide now, but please consider it. Ethan looked at Margaret. She was smiling through tears. You saved my life, she said. Now let us help save yours. Ethan spent 2 weeks in the hospital. They treated his pneumonia with antibiotics, cleaned and dressed the wounds where his toes had been amputated, got him on a physical therapy regimen to help him learn to walk again with his altered feet. They fed him 3 meals a day plus snacks. He gained 20 pounds in 2 weeks. His face filled out. Color returned to his cheeks. For the first time in 4 years, he looked like a living person instead of a ghost. Margaret visited every day, sometimes twice a day. She brought books, magazines, puzzles, anything to keep him occupied. They talked a lot. Ethan learned about her life. She'd been a professor of literature at Northvale University for 30 years. Her husband had died 10 years ago. She had 1 son, Richard, and 2 grandchildren she hadn't seen in 3 years. Why? Ethan asked. Why were you on the streets? Margaret was quiet for a long moment. Pride, she said finally. Stupid, foolish pride. She told him about the fight with Richard, how he'd wanted her to move into a retirement community, how she'd seen it as him trying to control her, put her away, how they'd said terrible things to each other. I told him I'd rather die than let him run my life, she said, her voice thick with regret. And then I left, cut off all contact, changed my name, disappeared. You wanted to punish him. Yes, and I ended up punishing myself. She wiped her eyes. I was stubborn, angry, convinced I could make it on my own. But the money ran out faster than I expected, and once you're on the streets, it's so hard to get back. Everything becomes about survival. You lose yourself. I know, Ethan said quietly, but I got a second chance. Because of you. She took his hand. And now I'm making sure you get one too. The day Ethan was discharged, Richard came with a car. Not just any car, a Mercedes, with a driver. Is this really necessary? Ethan asked, feeling awkward in the borrowed clothes Margaret had brought him. Real clothes, new clothes. They still had tags on them. Absolutely, Richard said with a grin. Can't have my new program manager taking the bus. They drove through Northvale. Ethan watched the familiar streets pass by. He'd walked every one of them, slept in half the alleys, knew which dumpsters had the best food, which doorways were warmest, which cops would hassle you, and which would leave you alone. The car stopped in front of a modest apartment building, clean, well-maintained, in a safe neighborhood. What's this? Ethan asked. Your new home, Richard said. Come on. They went inside, up to the 3rd floor. Richard unlocked a door and stepped aside. Ethan walked in. It was a studio apartment, small but clean and bright. Hardwood floors, a kitchenette with a stove and microwave, a bathroom with a real shower, a bed, an actual bed with a real mattress and pillows. Ethan couldn't speak. The fridge is stocked, Richard said. Basic groceries. There's a phone on the counter. It's yours, already activated. Clothes in the closet. Everything you need to get started. I can't accept this. You can and you will, Richard said firmly. Consider it an advance on your salary. I haven't agreed to take the job. But you will, Richard smiled. Because you're not the kind of person who can say no to helping people. He was right. Damn him, he was right. Thank you, Ethan said, his voice breaking. Thank you. Richard clapped him on the shoulder. Thank me by making the program amazing. Help people the way you helped my mother. After Richard left, Ethan stood in the middle of the apartment. His apartment. He had a home. For the first time in 4 years, he had a home. He walked to the bed and sat down. The mattress was soft. So soft. He ran his hand over the comforter clean. New real. He lay back, stared at the ceiling, and cried. The Second Chance Initiative launched 3 months later. The opening ceremony was held at the renovated Northvale Community Shelter. The building was unrecognizable from the overcrowded, underheated chaos it had been. Fresh paint, new windows, a modern heating system that actually worked, rows of new beds with real mattresses, a commercial kitchen, a medical clinic, meeting rooms for job training and counseling. On the outside, a new sign, North Vale Community Shelter and Resource Center, a place of hope. And beneath it, a plaque, in memory of Emily Cole. May we never forget those who had no one to save them. Ethan stood in front of the plaque, reading it for the 100th time. She'd be proud of you, Margaret said, coming to stand beside him. I hope so. Inside, the ceremony was about to begin. Local press, city officials, donors, shelter residents. Linda grabbed Ethan's arm as he entered. You ready for this? No. She laughed. Good. Means you're taking it seriously. Come on, you're speaking in 5 minutes. I'm what? Richard didn't tell you you're giving a speech. Linda, I can't. Yes, you can, and you will. These people need to hear from you. You're the heart of this program, Ethan. You're the reason it exists. Ethan wanted to argue, but Linda had already moved away, barking orders at volunteers. The ceremony began. Richard spoke first, then the mayor, then Linda. Then it was Ethan's turn. He walked to the podium on unsteady legs. The missing toes threw off his balance. He was still getting used to it. He looked out at the crowd, dozens of faces, hundreds of eyes. His mouth was dry. I'm not good at speeches, he started. Several people laughed, which helped. But I want to say something. A year ago, I had nothing. No home, no hope, no reason to think tomorrow would be any better than today. He paused, gathering his thoughts. I spent 4 years on the streets. 4 years of cold and hunger and fear. 4 years of being invisible, of watching people look through me like I didn't exist. The room was silent. And then I met someone who needed help. An old woman dying in the snow. And I had a choice. I could walk away, keep what little I had, and maybe survive. Or I could give it away, give her my coat, my food, my bed, and risk dying myself. He looked at Margaret in the front row. I chose to help. And that choice almost killed me. But it also saved me. He turned back to the crowd, because here's what I learned, we're all connected. Your pain is my pain. Your struggle is my struggle. And when we help each other, really help each other with no expectation of reward, we're not just saving them, we're saving ourselves. His voice grew stronger. My sister died because no one helped us, and I spent years hating the world for that. But now I understand the world doesn't change because of hate. It changes because of love, because of kindness, because of people who choose to care when it's easier not to. He pulled out the crumpled piece of paper, the promise he'd written years ago. He held it up. This was my reminder. My reason. My sister died from the cold. I won't let it happen again. And now I'm making it our mission. He looked around the room, making eye contact with as many people as possible. We won't let anyone else die from the cold, from hunger, from loneliness. We won't look away. We won't walk past. We'll stop. We'll help. We'll care. Because that's what it means to be human. The applause started slowly, then built into a standing ovation. Ethan stepped back from the podium, his heart pounding. He'd done it. The Second Chance Initiative's first anniversary was marked with a small celebration. In that year, they'd helped 93 people find stable housing, 67 had found jobs, 42 had reconnected with estranged family members, 15 had overcome addictions. The numbers were good, but Ethan knew they were more than numbers. They were people, lives, second chances. He kept a wall in his office covered with photos. Program participants who'd agreed to be photographed, smiling faces, people who'd made it. Some hadn't. 2 people they'd tried to help had died, one from an overdose, one from complications from untreated diabetes. Ethan had gone to both funerals, grieved for people he'd barely known but desperately wanted to save. You can't save everyone. Linda had told him that early on. You can only do your best. But God, it hurt when you lost someone. Still, there were victories. Like Diane, the middle-aged woman from his first workshop. She'd been on the streets for 6 years after a divorce left her with nothing. Now she had an apartment, a job as a receptionist, custody of her teenage daughter again. Like Carlos, the young man who'd saved Ethan behind the deli. He'd completed the job training program and was now working in construction, making good money, saving up for his own place. Like Rita, the woman from the heating vent. She'd overcome her addiction to crack cocaine, gone through 3 months of rehab sponsored by the initiative, and was now 6 months sober, working as a peer counselor helping others who struggled with addiction. These were the stories that kept Ethan going. Margaret had become a fixture at the shelter. She taught 3 classes a week, resume writing interview skills, and a creative writing workshop that was surprisingly popular. People need to tell their stories, she'd told Ethan. It's how we process trauma, how we heal. One evening, after everyone had gone, Ethan and Margaret stood in the empty main hall. The piano donated by Richard sat in the corner. Someone had been playing earlier. The notes still seemed to hang in the air. "You've done good work here," Margaret said. "We've done good work," Ethan corrected. "This isn't just me." "But it started with you, with your choice to help a stranger." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. "Do you ever regret it?" Margaret asked. "Giving me your coat, your food, almost dying." Ethan thought about it, really thought about it. "Sometimes I think about how close I came, how easily it could have gone wrong, how I could have died in that alley. And I think I'd still do it, because the alternative, walking away, letting you die, that would have killed me anyway. Just slower. From the inside out." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. She reached out and squeezed his hand. "You're a good man, Ethan Cole. I'm just a man who got a second chance, and who wants to give that to others." Spring arrived in Northvale. The snow melted, revealing grass and sidewalks. The temperature climbed. Trees budded. Flowers bloomed in window boxes and public gardens. The city came back to life. Ethan stood on the steps of the shelter on a warm April morning, watching people come and go. Some were residents, some were volunteers, some were people seeking help for the first time. Each person had a story, a reason they were here, and each person deserved dignity and respect and a chance. A young man approached the shelter. He was thin, dirty, with haunted eyes. He couldn't have been more than 19. Ethan recognized that look, had worn it himself not long ago. He walked down the steps. "Hey, you looking for help?" The young man nodded but didn't speak. His eyes darted around, suspicious. "It's okay," Ethan said gently. "You're safe here. Come on, let's get you inside." As they climbed the steps, the young man asked, "What's the catch?" Ethan smiled. "No catch. We just want to help." "Why?" "Because someone helped me once, when I had nothing, when I was ready to give up. Someone saw me and chose to care. And now I'm doing the same for you." The young man looked at him for a long moment. Something in his expression softened. "Thank you," he whispered. "You're welcome. Come on, let's start with a hot meal and a warm bed. Then we'll figure out the rest." Inside, the shelter was bustling. Linda was at the front desk. Margaret was setting up for her writing class. Volunteers prepped lunch in the kitchen. Music played softly from the piano. The young man looked around, and Ethan saw hope flicker in his eyes. "What's your name?" Ethan asked. "Tyler." "Tyler, I'm Ethan. Welcome to the Northvale Community Shelter. Welcome to your second chance." That evening, after all the residents had been settled and the volunteers had gone home, Ethan stood alone in the main hall. The same spot where he'd stood a year ago, broken and hopeless, watching someone else get the bed he'd waited weeks for. The same spot where he'd made the choice that changed everything. Margaret found him there. "Thinking?" she asked, coming to stand beside him. "Yeah." "About what?" "About how different everything is. About how one choice, one moment can change the entire trajectory of your life." "Do you mean giving me your bed?" "I mean all of it. The coat, the food, the bed. Every choice I made that night." Margaret took his hand. "Those choices saved my life. And they saved mine," Ethan said. "I just didn't know it at the time." They stood together in the quiet, warm shelter. The sun was setting outside, sending golden light through the windows. "You know what I've learned," Ethan said after a while. "What?" "Kindness doesn't make you rich overnight. It doesn't solve all your problems or erase your past. But it does something more important." "What's that?" "It saves lives. Sometimes the person you're trying to save, sometimes yourself, sometimes both." Margaret smiled. "Your sister would be so proud of you." Ethan felt tears sting his eyes. "I hope so. God, I hope so." "I know so." They watched the sunset together, comfortable in the silence. Finally, Margaret spoke. "What would you say to her if you could talk to Emily now?" Ethan thought for a long moment. I'd tell her I'm sorry I couldn't save her, but I'm trying to make her death mean something. I'm trying to save everyone I can so no one else has to die cold and alone. And I'd tell her I love her, that I never stopped loving her, that not a day goes by when I don't think about her." "She knows," Margaret said softly. "Wherever she is, she knows." 2 years after that night in the storm, Ethan stood at Emily's grave. He hadn't been here in years, couldn't face it before. The guilt was too heavy. But now he could. The headstone was simple. Emily Rose Cole, beloved sister, gone too soon. Ethan knelt and placed flowers daisies, her favorite, at the base. "Hey, Em," he said quietly. "It's been a while." The cemetery was peaceful, quiet except for birds and the rustle of leaves. "I'm sorry I stayed away so long. I couldn't face you. Couldn't face what I'd let happen." He wiped his eyes. "But I want you to know something. I kept my promise, the one I wrote down. Remember, I won't let it happen again. I kept it, Em." He told her about Margaret, about the coat and the bed, about Richard and the initiative, about the hundreds of people they'd helped. "We're making a difference," he said. "One person at a time. We're making sure no one else dies cold and alone, making sure everyone has a chance." He placed his hand on the headstone. "I miss you every day, but I'm okay now. For the first time in years, I'm actually okay. I have a home, a job, a purpose, friends, people who care about me." The wind rustled through the trees. "I love you, Em. Always will, and I promise I'll keep fighting. For you, for everyone who doesn't have anyone else fighting for them." He stood, wiping his eyes. As he walked away, he felt lighter, not free of the grief that would never go away completely, but no longer crushed by it. That night, Ethan returned to his apartment, his home. He made dinner pasta with marinara sauce, nothing fancy, but filling and warm. Ate at his small table, looking out the window at the city lights. His phone buzzed. A text from Margaret. "Class went great today. One of the students wrote the most beautiful poem. Reminded me why I love teaching. Thank you for this opportunity." He smiled and texted back, "Thank you for everything." Another text came in. This one from Carlos. "Got promoted today, assistant foreman, drinks tomorrow to celebrate." Ethan replied, "Absolutely. Congrats." He set down his phone and looked around his apartment. Small, modest, but his. On the wall was a framed photo of Emily, her gap-toothed smile, her bright eyes. "We did it, Em," he said to the photo. "We really did it." And maybe, just maybe, somewhere beyond the reach of words, Emily smiled back. Kindness doesn't make you rich right away. It doesn't solve all your problems. It doesn't erase your past, but it can save a life. And sometimes, it saves you. The cold will always come. Winter will always return. But now, in Northvale, there are more warm beds, more hot meals, more second chances. Because one man with nothing chose to give everything. And that made all the difference.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.